Welcome to Something to Talk About from the Bainbridge Island Senior Community Center. Today we're going to be talking about gardening with Ann Lovejoy and company. We have a group gathered around the table and some folks online. I want to thank Fieldstone Communities of Bainbridge Island for sponsoring Something to Talk About. They provide assisted living and independent living and also memory care up on Rolling Bay. And they are holding a summer bash coming up Thursday, July 31st. You have to register this week, though. You can enjoy delicious barbecue, some fun and games, a beer and wine garden. The tickets are $10 for adults and $5 for seniors and kids, with all proceeds benefiting Bainbridge Prepares. Find out more online at fieldstonecommunities.com. Also, I'd like to acknowledge that we are meeting on the ancestral homeland of the Salish people. The Suquamish, our neighbors, have been living on these shores and plying these waters since time immemorial. And we are grateful for their stewardship and are learning ourselves to be better stewards of these lands and waters. I am hearing some talk already from the other room. So rather than let you wonder where it's coming from, I will put them on the screen and welcome Ann Lovejoy. If you are trying to mute while you're talking about something, Ann, all you have to do is push the little button in front of you and it will turn red, and then you know that you won't be picked up by the microphones.
Red with embarrassment, right?
Anyway.
So welcome, everybody. Thank you for showing up. Yeah, we spent a happy morning outside gardening. Most of that, really what we were doing is watering and doing a little deadheading, because one of the things to remember about this time of year is certain things like the calendulas or the early annuals and things start to get a little weary looking. Cut them back, cut all the dead ones off, and don't just chop the heads off. I just was picking up a whole lot of dead stems. Take them all the way down to the next bud and just above that. And then it will still look beautifully furnished and nice and not like a whole bunch of pokey chopsticks waiting to die. So doing that refreshes the plant, as does watering. And we also put out a fair amount of, Dr. Earth has this really good sustainable fertilizer that looks sort of like bad instant oatmeal. It's sort of this scrubbly looking stuff, but you sprinkle it on the ground, you can scratch it in a little, but basically you're gonna water it in. So every time you water it, delivers a little bit of nutrient. And it's balanced and it lasts pretty long time. And it's just a really good way to kind of pep up in the, this is like high summer now, right? It's in the 80s. Plants are looking kind of sad. Water is not enough. They actually need to have something to eat as well. So a little fertilizer is going to go a long way to making them come back, bounce back and have another bloom period. That's also true for tomatoes. And I had a long conversation this morning with someone about their tomato plants and why they are not doing very well. And it turns out that, interestingly enough, plants need water and fertilizer. It's an amazing thing. And here in the Northwest, people sort of think, well, it rains all the time. But actually, if you pay attention, it doesn't. And in this time of year, it's been very, very dry. So
it's a secret.
Yeah, it's a secret, but I'm telling everybody for free. And the thing is, if you're hand watering, it takes a very skilled meditation monk to hand water properly, because you have to be able to really stand there and do it for quite a long time. And people say, well, I counted to 15. It's like, yeah. And then if you scratch, the top is wet and with a half inch down, it's powder dry. You have to really stick with it. And that's why I really like the little bubblers. They're inexpensive. I think they're about $6. Get them at Ace, and they attach to a hose end and they just burble. And you set them on fairly low and they'll wet like a 3x3 area, which actually is going to get down to the roots and penetrate. And you can leave that on for 20 minutes and it will actually deliver adequately and it'll seep down.
So you just set your timer for 20 minutes. That's long enough.
I do it on my watch. I mean, my
your
phone,
device, right?
My device,
our all-purpose,
whatever we call these things.
Exactly.
Yeah. And set it. So, and then you have to remember why you set it. That's the second part. But the thing about it is, after you go 20 minutes, scratch the soil and see how deep that water actually went. Take a look, because if you're watering pretty regularly, you probably will be able to keep the soil fairly moist. But if you haven't been, and then you start trying, it still takes a long time to absorb that water deep enough down to do the roots any good. It's dry, right?
Yep. So would you repeat again what the Dr. Earth fertilizer that you were talking about?
They have several, and the one, I mean, I use whichever one is on sale, basically. So there's
Yep.
one it's called this, it's a lawn booster, but it's really almost identical to the one that's for vegetables and flowers. So, it's sustainable and slow feeding, and it does great. Nice delivery. It's pretty low numbers. You won't see like 10, 10, 10 or 20, 20, 20. It's not that. It's more like 4, 6, 8, 2 or something, but it delivers the goods over time in a very sustainable way. And that's what's more important. And you can switch them up, like try one for a couple weeks and try another for a couple weeks. When we're watering so much, any kind of fertilizer is getting washed away very quickly. And so the thing to think about is you have to replenish it. And so fertilizing, hanging baskets every 2 weeks, things like tomatoes, peppers, every couple of weeks now at this time of year. You'll taper later as they start to ripen up and stuff. You don't want to encourage new growth all the way into the summer because they'll just do new growth instead of fruit. But fertilizing only works if you also water. It's the second magic ingredient. You gotta have
Exactly. It won't get down there if it just sits
it won't get
on
down
top.
there. There has been zero rain and there's zero rain expected for quite a long time. So it's just one of those things we have to remind ourselves, right?
So I've been told not to get water on the tomatoes, but to try to water them below their leaves.
Yeah, it depends on what time of day. It sometimes in the heat of the day, if you get water on leaves, it can focus the sun like a little lens and burn it. There's that. If you water at night and get the foliage really wet, they go into the night wet. It's very humid. They can get molds and mildews and stuff like that. The leaves are not what's thirsty. It's the roots that are thirsty. So yeah, you want to try to focus on the root zone. And remember that the root zone of a plant is about where the drip line is. So my big tomatoes are 6 feet tall right now. And their root zone is going to be out like this. It's not like this anymore, right? It expands. So you want to make sure the water's going to the roots, not the throat. They don't drink with their throat like we do. They drink from their finger roots out and the edges.
But that's where a bubbler makes a lot of sense because you're going to actually just water what needs the water, which is the ground, and just make sure that it's sort of on the periphery of the plants.
Yeah, exactly.
Or next to a couple of plants in between.
You can put it between 3 and really score. But yeah, they're easy to move around, and you can use a hose divider and run a couple hoses because you're not really using that much water. So you can have a couple of them running at the same time in different parts of the garden. And that makes it a little bit easier to do zones. You do one, I call it a set. I do one set and then I move to another set. And I have places that I know I'm going to reach a lot of things. And those are the set points, and that you don't have to go around to every single plant. You're doing groups and clusters.
Now, I know I proudly have what grass I have turning very brown, but should I be worrying about trees?
Here's the thing. We don't know yet. Climate change is affecting a lot of plants that have been here for a really long time. Our native plants have been habituated for millennia, basically, as far as we know, to have the winter wet, dry summer. But now we're having dry winters too. We've been in a state of drought and even a state of extreme drought off and on for the last decade. And we still are right now. So some of those plants are getting stressed in ways that it used to be unusual and now are not. So we don't know. Watering a tree is a pretty big job. Like if you think about an 80-foot tall cedar, standing there with your hose for 15 minutes is not actually going to do anything. And even a bubbler is not really going to help. We recently in my neighborhood had some really interesting die-off of trees. A Port Orford cedar just tanked in a matter of weeks, which is unusual. Cedars are usually pretty hardy and tough. But it turned brown and then it, turned orange. And then I got the tree people in and they looked at it and it had been chewed by borers, which is more common than it ever used to be. And the whole base was infiltrated and it could have blown over. not something you expect from a cedar. If you've seen a cedar blow over, they have take a big root ball with them usually, right? But if they're attacked by boring beetles, then they become like a little sponge almost, and that they could come down really easily. We also had another tree right across the street, turn black, die, boom, just in a matter of weeks. Then pretty soon that was a maple. A dogwood next to it died very quickly thereafter. And this year, then a pieris, a lily of the valley shrub, turned black. And when the tree people came, it turned out that maple had two different root rots, a fungus, and a bacterial infection called wet wood or slime flux, which actually smells horrible. So when they cut the wood, everybody's walking by and going, oh God, it smells awful. You can't burn it. You can't use it. We had to have them take every scrap of the wood away. It has to be burned because it can't be used as mulch. It can't be used as firewood, God forbid, right? So there are cases where you have to be really careful about what's going on with your plants and find out before you just assume you could use it as firewood or something like that. Same with the birches. A lot of birches are dying off and they start to die at the tops and they get bronze birch borer. The city hall just lost 4 or 5 of them to that. And the borers are in the wood. So again, if you take that wood home and go, this will make great firewood, actually, it will spread to other plants around and you'll be like harboring a little hostel for pests. So you have to really know what you're doing. And if you're not sure, ask an arborist. And an arborist is not a person with a truck and a chainsaw, just by the way. An arborist is somebody who actually is certified and knows what they're doing and can tell the difference about why a tree is dying and what might have caused it. Just really important.
So the answer is hard to say about what the right thing to do is and whether we actually have the capability to water enough to counter this drought for trees.
Well, if you think about it, how do you water a fir tree that's
Right.
100 feet tall? I don't think we can do that. And there are plants like the madrones, which do not like summer water and actually start to get other diseases if they're exposed, like if they're planted or they happen to be growing in an area that gets irrigated in the summer, like if people keep their lawns green, because madrones like to be at the edge of forests, at the edge of the woods. That's their preferred place. But if they border a lawn and the lawn gets watered, they start to get root rots and then they'll get those spots. You'll see the black spots on the leaves and sometimes rust as well. So yeah, not watering trees is a brand new tree that you just planted.
Right.
Yes, absolutely. Yes. For the next 2 or 3 years. Yes. In the summertime.
Okay. Well, that was a difficult answer for a question I had. Anyway, I don't know. That's all right. That's why we ask you to come. We really appreciate it. Does anybody else have a question? I know you had a couple other topics, which I will clue you on, but I want to make sure that if somebody brought a question.
I did want to mention that one of the things I talked about to the several people this morning who stopped by for personal information, that one way to deliver water to, like a rose bush needs about 5 gallons a week at this time of year. And to give that is kind of tricky, but one thing you can do is fill a gallon jug. You poke a hole in the bottom with a big nail and then put duct tape over it. Fill it with water. And then when you take it to your plant, I invert them. And sometimes I'll put 2 rebar little stakes nearby to keep it from tipping. And then pull the tape back and it will very slowly glug, glug, glug and deliver that gallon. And if you do that 3 or 4 times a week, you know that that plant is getting what it needs. And that would be good for young trees, newly planted trees and shrubs, established roses that are trying to bloom in this really hot, dry weather, things like that. The other good technique is of course you wouldn't do this, but if you know somebody who drinks wine in boxes, you can use the boxes and they have those little faucets kind of, right? So you fill it up with water and then open it just a little bit and let it trickle down and then you'll get a good half a gallon each time.
Great, very helpful.
And if you don't like the look of it, you could spray paint it gold or you could do a little Mod Podge.
Well, as Anita or my neighbors will tell you, that isn't a big issue for me.
I had Can I ask?
Yeah, speak up.
On some of my container plants on the balcony, I'll notice yellow leaves. And I have been wondering, does that indicate I'm not watering enough or they're lacking nutrients?
So great question. So yellowing leaves, especially on pot plants, and if the pots are not particularly big,
Mhm.
it can be either too much watering or not enough watering. Just saying.
Yeah.
It can also be lack of nutrients because, as I said, when you water a lot, you're rinsing all the nutrients away. So I always say, put a big deep saucer there to at least capture it. Then that whatever nutrients you washed away can actually be taken up from the bottom and
Okay.
absorbed that way. If it's not absorbing, check to make sure the drain hole is clear.
Okay.
Because sometimes that will get blocked and then you're really not. Because what happens in pots is a lot of times they dry out the soil, and when you water, it actually just runs to the edge and runs right down and collects in a saucer, and you're not actually getting the water to where you want it.
Uh-huh.
So bottom watering, at least in combination with top watering, is a really good way to get around that. If it's not enough nutrients, you'll see the plant will be small and spindly and kind of weak looking. And again, rather than dumping a lot of, Miracle Grow or something on there, I like to use, this is, I don't know if you can see it. Can you see that, Reed? It's kind of gross.
Okay.
It's E.B. Stone's fish emulsion with kelp. Now, fish emulsion smells fishy, but not like yummy salmon on the grill. It's not that kind of fishy. It's the kind of fishy that you think something died. And it did, actually. The fish died to make this for you. But it is really very nutritional. This one has also, because of the kelp, it has a lot of minerals. And one of the things that can happen with plants in pots is they don't have access to real soil. So they only have the potting soil, which is a constructed soil. It's not really very complex. And so when you use things like seaweed extract, or the kelp meal is another way to do it, which is less smelly, or the liquid fish, and you're also adding all the micronutrients that are in kelp, that are in seaweeds, and which is seawater, has too much salt in it to be good to water with on a regular basis. But like I said many times, if you give all your tomatoes 1 quart, 1 time of seawater, you get all the nutrients, you get the salt, and it boosts the flavor remarkably.
Okay, that's right. I remember you saying.
Yeah.
Seawater.
Just 1 time. When it's starting to set fruit, that's when you do it, so that it integrates into the plant. And then the tomatoes, actually the growers, like Cornell University did a lot of studies on this, because in New Jersey, they had huge fields of tomatoes that were grown for decades, actually many decades, and they started losing their flavor. And they were putting more nutrients in and dumping on fertilizer, and it didn't do anything. And then they did an analysis and realized that the salt was there was no more salt in the soil.
Wow.
The plants had taken it up. So they created artificial sea salt that you can buy and use in mixtures, and they put it into their fertilizers, which they spray the fields with. But we have free seawater right out our back door, so we can do it that way. But you don't
So we
want
want-
it all the time.
So there you go. You want to make the salt of the sea a little bit back the salt of the earth.
Yeah, just once,
Oh,
right? It's kind of cool.
I have another question then.
Good.
You were saying that pots should drain,
Uh-huh.
and I try to do that unless I want to really, whatever. Sometimes I'm not so good about that, but when I have a hole in the bottom of the pot, I usually take my coffee filter and put that down up to kind of over the hole before I put the soil in. Am I doing an unfavorable thing for the plant?
Not necessarily, but it can clog.
Yeah.
And so I usually put what we call crocked pots, which means broken pots,
Mhm,
and take some of the odd shaped pieces, like at the bottom of the pot, there's usually that funny shape that makes a little arch almost.
Yeah.
If you put that over the hole, you make sure that there's flow and the soil doesn't get in there and clog it up.
Okay.
You can also take a skewer or a rod of some kind and just poke the hole out. Make sure
Okay.
that do that periodically if it
Mhm.
feels like it's not taking it up.
Okay.
But the coffee filters are fine for that kind of thing. But the coffee itself, like the coffee grounds, are fantastic mulch for tomatoes, for roses, for
Okay.
rhododendrons, for a lot of things, but tomatoes especially, because it actually helps prevent late blight, which is something that happens in humid weather, which, we have quite a bit of right now. Hot, humid weather can create blight conditions. So if you take that coffee grounds and put it in a 1/2 inch layer on your plants on the soil around your plants.
Mhm.
It does a couple things. If slugs cross it, because there's enough caffeine left in it, it actually dehydrates them. So it's like they turn into you could make little earrings out of them and they'd be so cute. But so that works for that, but it also is very nutritive. It's like 911. So it actually is good nitrogen source for
Okay.
those plants as well.
About half inch, you say?
Yeah, you don't want it really thick, but about half inch.
You can do that once.
Well, you can do it off and on as it gets integrated into this, because the worms will do your mixing outside. In a pot, they're not so apt to do that. So then, yeah, in a pot on their balcony or in your house, just once. You can do tea leaves that way too. Once you've made your tea,
Mhm.
the tea leaves can make a little mulch for your indoor house plants.
Okay.
Looks kind of cute.
Yeah.
You had a note about weeding. Do you want to talk about weeding?
I do want to talk about weeding. So one of the things that happens in this time of year is the plants in your beautiful garden are struggling and they're dry and small. And you look up and you can see a patch with the weeds that are standing tall and lusty and happy as can be, right? Am I wrong? Yeah. So two things are at work here. One, a lot of weeds are plants that just thrive without you, right?
Sure.
And they might be native, in which case they're not actually weeds, they're native plants. Or they might be what we call Eurotrash invaders, like Himalayan blackberries and things like that. But the point is they do really well without much help, even without any help. And the other thing is that they are growing in undisturbed soil. Whereas when we tend our gardens and we think we're doing such a great job, we might till, God forbid you till, don't till anymore. You disturb the soil like that, it's like a tsunami is coming. It's just had this huge earthquake. There's an immediate flush release of nutrients, the plants take it all up, and then the soil is depleted. And until it gets restored, it's just basically a medium to hold the plants upright until you fertilize it. So tilling is a destructive process. You don't want to do that. But we often do quite a lot of time when we're weeding, pulling a lot of things out. So one good way to think about weeding is like water first, counterintuitive, but then the soil will be open and you won't be pulling up a ginormous dry root ball and spraying the seeds all over the place. If the thing is in seed, I usually put a little bag over it, paper bag, cut the plant, shake the seeds out, and then you can put that in the green waste, right? Because otherwise, like shotweed particularly, which, is that little one with the teeny white flowers and it's just everywhere. And when the seeds explode, they throw themselves all over the place, right? You can actually hear them. But yeah, you don't really, when you pull that, the seeds go everywhere and the dirt goes everywhere. You've left a hole, right? So trying to weed in a way that's less disturbing to your garden environment is a really good idea. I hope that makes sense.
Well, when I've had bigger patches, I've put cardboard down and then I put mulch over it. So I just crush the weeds and I don't then disturb the soil. I've done that.
Yeah, and so that works, especially in a wet year, that works. In a dry year, come fall, you'll find that you have some compost with a piece of cardboard under it. Because it doesn't really allow the soil to breathe very well and it doesn't allow water to penetrate. So in some ways it's fine. Short term, especially in winter, it makes sense. Like when the ground is sodden, you can wet that cardboard and make sure that it's really wet. You also want to make sure the cardboard does not have glue because a lot of the glues that hold cardboard boxes together is toxic.
Okay.
Also, you want to make sure it's not printed with glossy ink because the glossy boxes are usually toxic inks. Whereas if they're fairly flat and matte and look sort of cheapo, they're probably soy-based and they're fine.
Okay.
Same with newspapers, like if the glossy supplements are often toxic inks, but the supplements that look sort of second rate, they're probably soy and they're fine. Right? If you want to mulch, the best mulch that we know is really wood chips. If you have a big area of like in the wooded, maybe you have a little woodland under the trees, you can use what's called a hog fuel, which is a very coarse kind of wood chips very coarse, but it's fine for that kind of environment and it will break down over time. It suppresses weeds, it opens the soil. The Kitsap County did some studies quite a while ago now, but they found that 12 to 18 inches of wood chips can smother 80% of a stand of ivy in about 3 to 6 months. And that leaves the rest of it for you to pull, but by then the soil is open because it's created an environment where the worms can get in and actually work instead of the hard pan that was there before. So it opens the soil, it starts to heal the soil. As it breaks down, it uses some nitrogen, but it puts it back when it is rotted. So that's a great way to use very coarse chips in a path environment or even under trees, especially standing trees.
12 to 24 inches? Is that what
Yeah.
you said?
Well,
A
12 to
lot.
18, 12 to 18 is what they did, I think, but it was very effective. And it's most effective if it's a place where the truck can back up and you don't have to actually schlep it all the way. On the other hand, if you do the schlepping, you do not need to go to the gym, right?
Right, you can save yourself the gym membership.
Exactly. And
Now you tell me.
in the garden proper, I don't usually use that kind of hog fuel because it really is pretty coarse. Here at the senior center, what we used was medium chips, basically. And we refreshed the soil because it hadn't been refreshed in decades. And then we put compost on top of that, about 4 inches. And then we put the wood chips on top of that. And then we planted into it. And in the pollinator patch garden that you see out in front now was put in, I think, 3 years ago. And it was designed as a bed and breakfast for birds, bees, and butterflies. So it's full of things that pollinators enjoy. And one of the most notable is that there are about a dozen kinds of oregano in there, which is drought resistant. It is pest free. Many pollinators like it. Birds love the seeds. You can see all kinds of birds eating the seeds in the winter. And the other thing I love about it is that as the wind blows, it blows the seeds down. And now for about a quarter mile down the road, you can see little patches of oregano growing in the cracks of the sidewalk and along the street. And I just think, what a sweet, generous gift from nature, right?
I have a question about the mulch. What is the mulch that is big chips that's yellow? It's not brown or red that I see in the gardens, but sometimes it's this big, it's big chips. Is that what you're talking about? That's coarse mulch?
Well, so the hog fuel, that's a really big mulch, is really basically a tree that got put through a grinder.
What color is it?
It's mostly brown and gray.
Oh, because,
I don't know, like yellow like that.
no, not quite that yellow, but it's definitely, we have it at Grow.
I think those are wood chips,
They might be, yeah,
some kind of wood.
they might be
It is a
fairly
wood
fresh
chip?
wood chips.
Yeah.
Because wood chips gray off as they age. And if they're really fresh like that, and do they smell strongly of wood, then they're pretty hot and they can actually kind of make problems for plants because as they're breaking down, like I said, they're taking some nitrogen from the soil. Also, if they're very fresh, they don't really take up moisture very well. And sometimes that water just kind of runs off. But the brownish gray ones are aged.
Yeah, no, so what we have is, you say it's chips, it's not a
I'm
mulch.
guessing,
Yeah, it's
Well-
big and it's light colored.
I mean, they
Yeah.
use it as a mulch.
Yeah, mulch just is like coverlet. Mulch means blanket, basically.
Okay.
So mulch could be a feeding mulch like compost or worm castings, right? That kind of stuff. Or you could put, soy meal down and things like that are nutritive, cottonseed meal. And then you might just use regular compost, which is not very high in nutrients, but it's a great soil texturizer and it neutralizes pH. So our acid soils get neutralized the more compost you put in. And things like bindweed, which is prolific, and there's a Eurotrash invader that it loves, no matter where it is, it's just happy, right? And it will make these big, beautiful trailing vines with lovely white trumpets. Hummingbirds like them, the bees like them, gardeners absolutely hate them because they strangle everything, right? But the wood chips are a great way to attack that because they will also open the soil up. And then you can get more and more of the root out. And usually I would use my hori hori, which I happen to have misplaced somewhere. But it's a Japanese farmer knife and you can dig down in the soil and you'll find that bindweed has a long, white, thick root and lots of little tender rootlets coming off it. And the tender little rootlets, if you pull, all it does is tell bindweed to make more babies and it will spin up a lot more shoots. But if you dig down and get a hold of that white root, and usually there's lacing all through the garden, that will actually help slow down the bindweed and keep it out of your garden. We do have 2 native species. They're rather delicate and dainty. You might see them in the woods. That's not what's in your garden.
Oh.
But with that weeding with the hori is also really great because you can get the roots out. And if you don't, they're just gonna come back, everything, right? How about you, Linnea? Do you have a question?
Well, that was my main question, because I was told when I moved into this complex that that was the best thing for the trees.
What?
This big
Oh,
wood chip
Big,
stuff,
big wood chips.
big
Well-
wood chips.
I mean, as opposed to a bare earth, yeah, definitely.
But I took a piece of it to a nursery and they just said, it's the least expensive. That was their answer.
I'm sure that's true.
Yeah.
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 Because good arborist chips takes the whole tree and it's got the leaves and the twigs and the lichen and everything in it. And so it's a really complex mixture. Bark mixtures, which is often sold, they dye them with iron usually to make them look really rich and brown, but they're just bark. And bark doesn't have any nutritive value particularly. I mean, it's an overcoat. It's not part of the vascular system or anything else. So it's not really a feeding mulch at all. And in fact, it sheds water because that's what it's designed to do. Think about it. It's the raincoat for the tree, right? So when you put that down, you're blocking access to the roots for the water, right? And competing with the soil for nitrogen. And it is the cheapest thing you can do, but it isn't really in anybody's best interest except the person who sold it to you.
And
Interesting.
when you put mulch down around a tree, you should leave a little space around the trunk or not?
Well, it depends what you're doing. Like if it's a nutritive mulch, yeah, you don't put it, like they said, trees don't eat with their throat like we do. They eat with their roots, the feeder roots, which are usually sort of basically around the tree line, the drip line, right? So you can put loose, airy mulch like wood chips closer to the neck and it
Okay.
won't do anything because it's not, but you wouldn't want to shovel a whole lot of soil on there because they can actually smother. It takes them a long time, but in new housing, sometimes you'll see the trees, they left the trees, but when they graded the soil, the trees got buried. And so they're up to here instead of down to here.
Yeah.
And they slowly die. It might take them 15 or 20 years to smother.
I was told like insects, it'll soften the bark and insects will start, if you put mulch too close
Well,
to the tree trunk.
I mean, again, is it a wet mulch? Is it a nutritive mulch or is it
Yeah.
just wood chips? I mean,
Yeah.
insects are always hungry, just like everybody else. And insects are always looking. And we know that stressed plants send out actual pheromone signals and some of them are distress signals. And so pests can follow that and say, oh, here's somebody in trouble. Let's go raid the nursery well, nobody's around, or look for the pantry and dig in. Right? So that's part of what's going on with that. But, you don't want to pile, worm castings or rich compost around the neck of a tree, but you're not going to do anything to it with like some wood chips,
Okay.
right? Or even
Okay.
like leaf mold, stuff like that, right? Just scattering leaves around isn't going to hurt anything.
Okay. Yeah, because the reason I asked is there was always like a controversy where I was living before. And some people wanted the mulch, right up hugging the tree, and mostly gardeners would say, no, you're gonna damage the bark at the base of the tree if you do that and invite all kinds of viruses or insects or something.
Well,
So Anita, when we talked a couple months ago, Ann was saying that the worst is to let the grass grow right up there and walk
Yep.
up with your
weed
weed whacker
Oh,
and damage the tree. I mean, that will give those little insects a place to get in.
yeah,
Wow.
because it's the fresh cut. I mean,
Mhm.
trees are equipped with bark and the bark is part of their barrier system, right?
Mhm.
And-
Okay.
And so a healthy tree is going to have bark that's pretty hard to get through, right? Then you might see a tree that has a lot of woodpecker holes in it and you say that is a stressed out tree. The bark is thinning, everybody's moving in, the bugs are there, the birds are there, and it's great. It's part of the cycle, but if it's your special something, then you're not so happy about it. But basically the thing that you think about with trees is like the weed whacker damage, you're right, that causes more death of trees than anything else, and even wood slime, it's like,
Okay.
that's the worst. So I do like to put a circle of like low ground cover that doesn't need a lot of water or fertilizer,
Mhm.
like an epimedium or something. I put a big circle of that, or in an open area where it's sunny, I put a big circle of oregano around a tree so that you could mow it
Mhm.
or mow the edge of it, but you wouldn't be getting in there with a weed whacker, which is the real danger zone.
Okay. Oh, good to
So
know.
if you do have a tree die, what is your view about snags where it makes sense to keep them?
That's a great question. And, wherever you can keep them safely, it's great. You want to make sure that when you cut a tree, you leave, it depends on where you are, like 8 to 12 feet, depending on what it is and where it is and what it might fall on if it fails. But it's really is habitat. And that's an important piece for the birds and all the little mammals. So one of the things you want to think about is like, how safe is this for people? And is it really in a place that it's going to get used, right? But yeah, if you can keep a snag, it's great. And you'll see more bird life than you ever have before.
The nurse log?
A nurse log is a little different, but that's when, when a tree falls in the forest. And then what happens over time is they rot slowly, and then you'll see all these wonderful sprouts come up, right? And it's the only place you'll see a line in nature where there's like a hedge line of little tree sprouts coming up, right? But excuse me, gardening is
Oh,
rich in pollen. Thank you, Reed. Say something.
oh, what? Gosh. Yeah, I was thinking about trees down and wondering, you mentioned like that some trees smelled really bad too when you were burning it.
Yeah.
And I had an experience where we burned an aspen tree and it was terrible. We thought we were gonna use up the logs and no, we couldn't. It stunk so bad. And I thought, I wonder if there's some like, research, some book I could go to that says, because I know like applewood smells so wonderful when it burns. So there must be some information.
Oh, yeah, there is. So look up wet wood.
Okay,
It's one word, wet wood,
okay.
or slime flux.
I better write this.
Lux.
Okay,
And that's what makes the wood smell so horrible. And it's a bacterial infection.
okay. So it might not have been the aspen trees themselves. It was like something
Yeah,
in,
it was an infected tree.
oh, for heaven's
Which
sake.
is probably why it fell down or got cut down, right?
Yeah, okay, okay. Oh,
I have
that's
another
funny.
mulch question. So around town in the beginning of spring, a lot of mulch goes down that's just almost this black.
Right.
And is that mulch or is that soil that they're putting down? It's gorgeous if you like dark mulch. Is it good or
Usually
is
it's
it just
just,
aesthetic?
yeah, it's just for looks. And really weirdly, a lot of places, they put the mulch down and then they rake it up later because somebody complains about it in the HOA or whatever, that it looks messy. So there's this constant back and forth. I see it all the time in some of these, housing developments and stuff. A lot of times those mulches are really not nutritive. It might be even like sawdust, but it's dyed black with iron oxide to look rich and wonderful. But it doesn't, and you can sometimes, if you pick up a handful, you'll find your whole palm turns black.
So if you go to buy it at a nursery or a soil place, can you ask if it's been dyed? Would they know?
Yeah, any good nursery would know.
Okay.
They might or might not tell you. An independent nursery will definitely know and will tell you, but like a big box store nursery.
Yeah.
Might or might not.
It's in bags.
Well, I had this wonderful experience of buying a potted grass. But the pot said that it was a tree. And I took it to the counter and sort of said, that's labeled wrong. And he looks at it and goes, no, it's a little tree. It's going to grow up and be a tree. And I'm like, honey, this is an ornamental grass. The stripy leaves. This is not a tree. There's no trunk. No, honey, it's going to grow up and be this tree. That's what it says. And I just thought, wow. But they don't have any training.
Right.
The Kool-Aid. Well, you can't believe everything you read. And as a writer, I want to confirm that that is the truth.
Okay, now you also promised to talk a little bit about fruit tree pruning in the summer.
Because this is the time. If you have a tree that suckers a lot at the base and you try to prune that off in the winter, it actually just stimulates more suckering. And if you do it now, you take the suckers off the base, they rarely come back, or they come back far less, because hormonally the tree in winter is thinking about growth. And right now it's thinking about ripen, ripen, ripen. So the hormones are off busy doing something else and they don't get stimulated. Same with the water shoots. So water shoots are like you have a tree that's doing all this, and then the fruit trees especially straight up, and they get really thick and they go way high and maybe have a few leaves, but they don't really do much. Those are not helping the tree and they're never going to be fruitful. So you want to take those off, anything that goes arrow straight up. And also you get the big limb and then there'll be a curving branch underneath that also doesn't look like it's going to do much, and it doesn't. So those are called hangers. So you cut the water shoots, you cut the hangers, the limb goes up, and suddenly it's not hitting you in the face anymore. So that's the way to do summer pruning right now. If you just chop at random because a branch is sticking out too far, even at this time, what you're going to get is what we call the hydra head, where you cut in the wrong place, the bud is latent in the stem, and it's going to trigger a group of 3 to 5 branchlets, which is not what you want. So you want to make sure that you're looking back at the stem and cutting over a natural division or a place where there's a pair of leaves. And you make a slanting cut, and then it won't stimulate another bunch of stems. If it really is like in your face, take it off. And when you cut tree at this time of year, when you're doing tree pruning and you're taking a good sized branch, you want to undercut first, like take your saw and cut the base of it. And remember that trees, so they're not like stems. All the branches have a neck, and you want to cut outside the neck. So you don't leave a big stub, but you don't cut it flush. Except with firs, but you're not doing that. Fruit trees, you cut outside, you'll see there's like a little plumpness.
Yeah.
Yeah, like a collar. And you cut where it starts to turn into a more like a straw. That's where you make your cut. And I usually take a little bit of compost and rub it into the fresh cut, because that's an open wound, right? And it's an opportunity for something to move in. If you put a little compost on there, it's going to be beneficial and it will help it heal over.
Okay, because they used to tar it or do something,
Yeah,
and they stopped doing that, I know.
right. Because it's actually pointless. Yeah. Right. But a little compost
Compost.
or even fresh soil will be
Mhm.
a better way to go.
Okay, interesting.
Also, it's good to remember that your saws and your clippers and your loppers and your pruners all need sharpening periodically. And you can do it with a rasp, which takes very little time. You just kind of bevel it away on both sides and make sure there's no burrs left. And it doesn't take very long, but if you keep it sharp, you'll be amazed at how much easier they are to use. And with the folding saws, you can actually change the blades. And so after a while, if you find that you're just working so hard and they're clogging or they're not, then probably the blade is getting old and it might be time for a change.
Oh,
Do you
that's
always
good to
carry-
know. That's good to know. I have a candidate or two for that. That's for sure.
If you can't remember when you changed it last, it's time. It's probably time. If you never changed it, it's
Yeah, well,
definitely.
there we go. That's where I am. Anita, did you have something else you wanted to add?
I did, and it went through my mind. Oh, do you carry wipes? You know, like not only sharpening tools, but then I've always read how I should be cleaning them between cuts.
Really depends if it's infected, if there's something wrong.
And
Sure.
I always say, no, it just, I'm deadheading, and then
Yeah, that's a whole different deal.
okay.
But like that slime flux situation, you wouldn't bother to clean it while you were taking that tree down, but you'd certainly clean them before you, and with rubbing alcohol,
Yeah, okay.
and wipes. I don't use those things because they're plastic based mostly.
Yeah,
But a little rubbing alcohol on a cotton ball,
okay.
and then when it's dry, you can put it in the compost.
Hmm.
But that'll clean your blades off, definitely.
Okay.
Should we be thinking now at all about getting ready to plant things for winter?
Yes, we are thinking of that because this is when, like in my little sun porch, my little unheated sun porch where my tomatoes live, there's also a bunch of rainbow kale coming up. And there are some other kinds of starts in there, some different kinds of kale, some late beans, some late peas are going to go in. And it always seems counterintuitive to start growing a new crop at this time. My personal experience is that they don't do very well in the garden. If you have a sunny windowsill, or if you have the luxury of a little sun porch or a room that has great natural light, that might be the place. And put down a good tray so that you don't wreck the surface of whatever you're putting the plants on Ask me how I know this. But you want to make sure that you have something really waterproof. And I even put a towel under that just to make sure that if there's leaks or slops, that you're not warping the top of your bookshelf again. But that way you can grow them indoors in a sort of sheltered environment and they'll be ready to be hardened off. You know, you wouldn't put them out on an 85-degree day. You'd wait and then you put them out in direct light for a while and then put them out in morning light for a while, and then they could put them out in full day and then they're ready to go in the garden. Hardening off. And we know about that in the spring, but the fact is you're hardening them off in the other direction for the winter crops that have been in a more sheltered environment.
Okay, good to know. Are there any other questions for Ann? Comments about how it's going for you? Wishes for wetter, nicer? Looks like
Ann
Ann,
might have something to say.
she's trying to find the mute button. I'm going to ask her to unmute.
There. I have a spruce tree that has like a chronic ivy infection. So I pull it out.
Ivy.
Oh, okay.
So I pull it out and then it comes back and I pull it out and pull it out and pull it out. So then you talked about using wood chips deep to suppress the ivy and blow it away. So, but then you also said, well, you don't want stuff too close to your tree trunk. So is that a solution for the ivy that tends to be along the trunk?
So the best time to get the ivy out of the soil is really in the winter time when the soil is really open and wet and you can unreel it, you can pull out a lot. Because if you take it off the tree to as high as you can reach, what's left on the tree, you don't have to worry about. It's going to die. It might take it a while,
Right,
but it will die and eventually fall off.
right.
But the stuff that's in the ground that keeps coming back, getting those roots out can be a little trickier, especially if they've grown into the roots of the tree. But in the winter time, when the soil is open and wet, you can get out a ton of those roots.
Yeah, more.
And
Okay.
a loose mulch, like the wood chips, like not getting smother mulch with the big heavy compost or anything like that, just airy wood chips will help that soil open up so that when the rains come again, if they ever do, you'll be able to pull out tons of the ivy. One
Okay.
year, we were doing a big garden like that, and it was so full of ivy that we made ivy snowmen, like ivy men. We rolled these huge balls, all the roots we could get.
It's so frightening.
Put them on big slabs of plywood, so they couldn't root back in, but we made these figures and these people. It was a lot of ivy. It's kind of satisfying to do something interesting with
You
them.
artist, you.
Well,
kids
if you're trying to raise kids here, you might not get snow as often as you want. So.
Right.
Perfect.
But the kids at the Suquamish Elementary School, we had a contest when I was managing Bainbridge Gardens, and what was the best use of dead ivy. And they created these swamp monsters because they have a basket swamp there and with all these cool materials. And so they took their ivy and made these crocodiles with big teeth, all these cool animals. It was awesome. So get creative with it. And then it's more fun. That makes weeding less of a chore and more of a playtime.
So one more question.
Sure.
So I have a cedar, great big cedar. It's beautiful. And I have people come and they do my whipping and my mowing. And I noticed that some of the bark is beginning to be injured on that cedar. And so I wonder and it's basically grass right up to the trunk. So should I just put some mulch down or some wood chips down around that?
Yeah, but also tell them not to do that anymore.
Right. Oh, I'll tell them not to do that. Yes. But still,
yes.
telling them and having them actually behave, it's not the same.
Yes,
Right, because-
do not use the weed whacker against the trees, and please do not get out those blowers,
Right.
because Ann's talked about what that does to plants.
Yeah, because that's
Blowers?
like the big blowers where they go around blowing everything around.
Yeah.
When they use that in the garden, it blows the mulch off, it exposes roots, and it's like having a tornado come through and it kills the whole top inch of soil.
Oh,
And so
A
which is-
hot tornado, I might add.
yes, a hot
Yeah.
tornado.
Yeah, okay,
So
good.
it's basically, if you notice that gardens where that happens tend to look shocked for one thing, but everything's small and kind of, it doesn't grow very well or very much. And they're just sort of barely hanging on, and they usually prune them into poodle balls and things like that. And then they're just stunned and they just sit there. And there's all this space between them. It looks like a bad party where nobody's talking. Right?
But it's an
That's not
opportunity.
really a garden.
It's an opportunity to plant more plants next year.
Well, it's an opportunity to repair the soil, give the plants a chance to develop a natural shape. If the natural shape doesn't work there, take them out. It's better to shovel prune plant than to keep whacking the crap out of it over and over and over and over, right? Like if it isn't going to be what you want by nature, then find something that is. You know, there's so many plants that are planted right up against the house and then they turn out to be enormous. And so they're always being cut in half or cut in quarters or sheared or whatever. That's like, we call that the chainsaw relationship. And it only ends when somebody dies. It's either the plant or the chainsaw person, right? But you can't, pruning is not for size control, which is such an interesting point because people assume that it is, but it is not. It's for shape. It's for letting light and air in. It's for, you know, creating the right kind of interior environment so you don't get molds and mildews in there. It's not about keeping a plant to a certain size.
This is upsetting because I have a bunch of shrubs like this that are just overgrown. They're too big. Yeah.
Well, depending on what they are, sometimes a restorative cut, like if it's overgrown spirea, say, or overgrown lilacs and things, you can do a drastic cut
Yeah.
once every 10 years. But then what you really want to do is do more like every year you take out about a third of the oldest funky growth. And that way you keep the plant going, but you're restoring the young growth and keeping it from getting overdeveloped and gnarly and diseased.
Okay. Good. Thank you.
So
You're
we've
welcome.
been getting together. Ann, thank you so much. You and Rita have been hosting groups at the center on the third Wednesday. And by my calendar, that means that maybe you'll be doing that again on August 20th.
Probably.
Yeah. And that's at 10 o'clock, I think.
Yeah, and when it's really, really hot, we might work for a little while, do some watering, and then sit around and eat popsicles, which are
Oh.
still in the geyser freezer, right?
There you go. And of course, talk about these issues in
Oh,
person.
yeah, absolutely.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate it. It's another hour has gone by, as Click and Clack, the Tappet brothers used to say. You've wasted another hour with Ann Lovejoy.
Thanks.
Not
Thanks for showing up.
exactly. Have a wonderful afternoon and stay cool and
Right.
and have a popsicle.